Welcome to another episode of my Wake Up Call. This is the podcast where I find out a little bit about my guests and then I save wanting to find out more about them for the podcast. And I am excited is not the right word, but something like that about having Shannon Walker on. One of the things I'm excited about is she shared with me the most concise introduction, and I will be forever grateful for that. But then I'll tell you something else about her that excites me. She's the CEO and founder of Northwest Battle Buddies, a nonprofit organization on a mission to end suicide among our nation's military veterans struggling with PTSD. She is an experienced canine handler and trainer and passionate about animal rights. And why I'm so excited for her to be on the show and tell us about her journey getting here is I happen to be a dog owner. We've had dogs for 45 years. And sometimes when I feel like I'm in a doghouse in my family, which is not infrequently, when I come home and our current dog, little Tilly, miniature Doxy Tilly, and she comes up and she sees me and she wags her tail and she jumps up with her little paws on my legs. And my wife yells at me, make sure she doesn't pee. I'll tell you, she's got a friend in me and I've got a friend in her. And so there's something magical about that and healing. And Shannon's going to talk to us all about that. But I will ask her what I ask all my guests. What matters most to you that you think will matter most to you at the end of your life? And hold on to that. And then share an origin story or two. When you were growing up, what is it that you noticed out in the world? What did you notice about hurt in the world? What did you notice about things that could alleviate hurt? What did you notice that caused you to be a canine handler and trainer? And then what did you come to notice about the unbelievable 22 a day suicides in veterans that maybe dogs could help? So tell us it all, Shannon.
Wow, that was a really loaded, big question with lots of segues in there. So you might need to remind me about some of them. But the first thing you said, first of all, thank you for letting me be on your show. I'm very honored, and I've really enjoyed our conversation prior to even starting this right here. It really is an honor anytime anybody asks me to come on and share what we do, to be able to share my heart and this incredible mission and why. So you asked me, the first thing you said, what matters most to me in my life? Other than my relationship with God, it would be my twin boys, Jared and Jacob, who served in the military. I was a single mom raising them. And if I was to look at what I've done in my life, the achievements I have in my life, I would have to say, if you were to look at my personality test, Clifton Strength Finders, it tells you achievements at the top, but my why would be on this earth, providing for them, leading them, being an example, creating good human beings, teaching them to believe in what my father put, my belief system that my parents instilled in me, which my mother and my father were married for almost 15 years right before his death, which if anything in life could ever break you, then that would have, I would have to say, I'm not broken, but I felt really broken the day he died. My father is who and why I do what I do for our veterans. My dad served during the Korean War, and he taught me to believe in God, family, and country. And when you're in the presence of a veteran, you're in the presence of a hero, even though he never considered himself one. And I never watched him. We grew up in Pendleton, Oregon, and we'd be at the rodeos and the national anthem would be going, and my dad would have his hand over his heart, and his chin would be quivering and his eyes would be full of tears. And he was an incredible patriot, and he loved America, and he raised me like that. And so when I growing up, I never wanted to be a dog trainer. It never occurred to me. I just knew I had to have animals. I had to have dogs around me. Ever since I was little, I begged for a dog. In fact, I've been thinking so much lately about when I was a little girl. We had this creek below us, and I used to jump out on the big rocks when the creek was low, and I would have our little cockapoo Buttons with me, and I'd hold her in my lap, and I would sit in the middle of the biggest rock while all the water was rushing past me. And I'd be thinking about all the problems in my little life. And I was like 11 or 9. I mean, I was like really young to have a problem. Oh my gosh. But I always had to have a dog help me through it. I always had the connection that dogs had in my life has been, there's just something on this earth that dogs give you that I don't believe on this earth you get it anywhere else. There's an unconditional love and bond and connection, and they feel us. That is like a connection that I've never received anywhere else in my life. Again, I am a Christian. I love the Lord with all my heart, but on this earth, because dogs, they don't fail you, and they love you unconditionally, and they're there. And in my midnight hours, all alone as a single mom, crying a million tears, crying at my dad's gravesite, crying, my dogs sensed it. They were with me, and dogs have helped me in my loneliest moments as a single mom, raising boys with trauma, with everything. And I have the ability now to, through Northwest Battle Buddies, gift amazingly trained dogs as service dogs to our veterans and give them what I had growing up. But I give them so much more, because I'm giving a service dog that actually can professionally, it can task for symptoms of PTSD and help mitigate the symptoms of a disability. And my dogs were just there to lick my tears away and make me feel safe. But that in itself was what I needed. And how I started, I thought I was going to be a vet. I wanted to be a vet. I just knew wanted to do something with dogs, but I actually worked in a vet clinic and cried a lot. So I thought that wasn't for me. And then I ended up getting this German Shepherd dog that my husband, he was going to be my husband at the time. It was a marriage that didn't go well and didn't last. So I became a single mom. But he was like, get the dog trained or get rid of him. So I ended up finding an incredible trainer, world-class trainer in the Schützen sport, which is a sport out of Germany, much like, or sport out of Europe, much like police dog training, protection, tracking, and obedience. Fast forwarding to 10 years of competing, building my own business so I could raise my boys I built my own dog training business so I could raise my boys and I did it on my property. So I was a stay-at-home mom, even though on this 4 acres, I was not in the house much, and they were out in the kennel with me a lot. But because of the way my dad raised me to believe in God, family, and country, and when you're in the presence of a veteran, you're in the presence of a hero. When a veteran came into my business, he got my attention because he was a veteran. And he wanted his dog to be trained, his personal dog to be trained to be a service dog. And I did what I do because I had trained service dogs before. I just hadn't trained a dog for a veteran with PTSD. And so I just did what I do. I assessed her. She was young enough. She had temperament enough. She was healthy. And I was like, okay, then leave her with me for X amount of months. I'm going to train her. And when she's ready for us to add you to the equation, I will call you. And that's what we did. And that's where things started to really change for me. I trained service dogs before, and it was just kind of, it was just this, it's just the status was what it was. But when Kevin came in, number one, I learned, I'd heard about the suicide rate of PTSD. I'd heard about, of our veterans with PTSD, or sometimes PTSD being a contributing factor. And I only knew what the news media would say, which I have something to say about that sometimes. After you work with veterans with PTSD, you're like, there's so much more to this. And the world is telling their story is just, we're not doing justice telling their story because it's so significant. But when I saw Kevin working with his dog, number one, he opened up about his last firefight. It was an 8-hour firefight. He was in the Army. He was a front gunner. And the men and women out of his unit that survived that fight, after coming home on American soil, 6 of his battle buddies had committed suicide on American soil after coming home and surviving that firefight. And I watched his tears, and I watched him pour out, and I watched how he was dealing with this trauma. He he had been self-medicating for over a year. I mean, with illegal drugs, he had been self-medicating. And by the time he came to me, he had been clean. He was heavily involved in the VA and in counseling. And he was opening up about all this. But what was profound for me is when we went into public and I was teaching him to lead her, I saw him find courage inside himself to lead her places he was afraid to go alone. And I saw him find courage inside himself to do for her what he was not willing to do for himself. And to me, that was so profound, because number one, I couldn't believe what he was going through. And I couldn't believe the value she was bringing beyond the obvious. And we had finished our training and the different testing he had to go through. And when I watched him walk away that last training session, and I had accomplished a lot of things in the dog world at this point. I had won championships in Europe. I had competed against 13 countries. I had a lot of trophies on the wall. I had the privilege of working with police departments, helping them train their dogs. I had trained thousands of pet dogs, saved thousands of dogs. I've been doing this for 30 years. But when he walked away, walking tall, shoulders back, head high, with that dog at his side, I felt like I had significantly made the difference in the quality of somebody's life. And Kevin went back to the VA and he started, the people that at the VA in his group, his counselor, they saw a difference in him. And so veterans started to come to my business looking for help. And I didn't have dogs to give them. And in my simple-minded thinking, I thought, if I could just adopt dogs out of shelters, I could train them and I could gift them and I could say, thank you for my freedom. That was 212 service dogs ago, 212 veterans ago, out living life with freedom and independence, with a service dog at their side. And we have not lost one veteran to suicide. And it was birthed out of an experience of something profound, because I was able to connect the human condition with the instinct and the beauty that the dog is, combined with professional training, teaching them to task for the symptoms of PTSD, to mitigate the disabilities, and just make a difference. It's just been one of the most amazing, compelling, most difficult, heartfelt, but it's unbelievable, because these men and women allow us to come into their experience and they share and they find courage and they trust us. And it's an honor to walk out this journey with them. It's an honor. It's an honor. And I get to do this, and it's amazing.
Can you describe, so we can see it with our own eyes, when a symptom of PTSD meets the love from a dog?
Wow. Well, so if on the most simple example, it would be when we are in public, that when we have a veteran that is overcome because they don't want to go in public. When our veterans come into our business or into our program for 5 weeks, we train our dogs professionally for 5 months. And then veterans come nationwide and they train with us for 5 weeks, 5 days a week. And then they pass their testing and we gift these dogs. And when these veterans come in, they're going everywhere they don't want to go, doing everything they don't want to do. And they're doing it for the hope of what that service dog is going to mean in their life, because they want a better life. And on the most simple level, when we're out in public, I mean, it could be week 2, it could be week 3, when they're starting to have a panic attack, they start to notice how the dog is responding to them, whether they're sitting down, whether they're standing, the dog is nudging their arm, their hand, their dog is licking them. They're breaking them out of that moment. They're doing something to interrupt it, because they're smelling. Also, they're smelling and alerting on the adrenaline that's going through their body in this panic attack. And they're bringing them out of their head into the moment of now. And we teach our veterans how to recognize those moments and ground themselves and feel the dog and breathe and open up into their senses and smell the dog and feel the hair in between their fingers, and just even squat down and let that dog just soak into their body and bring them out of that moment. And sometimes the dogs will completely interrupt the moment. And sometimes panic attacks that would last a long period of time for the veteran, they really, really shorten it, you know? And so that happens right away in the relationship with the dog. And another story that is a little bit more profound. We had a veteran, and it was about week 3. And we had, I had a line of men and women in front of me, and I was talking about what we were going to be doing for the day. And I was talking about the dogs, and I was just doing what I do. And all of a sudden I saw the reaction from this one veteran be very strong reaction, to where I didn't know if I'd upset him. I didn't know why. He'd actually walked away for a minute. And I had to assess, like, and I was running in my mind, what did I just say? What happened? What possibly upset him? And then I went up and I checked with him before we were ready to go out in public. And I said, man, did I say something wrong? Are you okay? He goes, I'm fine. I said, did I say something wrong? He goes, you said everything right. And I'm like, okay. He goes, but I'm good. So I had to just respect that. And we went out in public, and he wanted to speak with me afterwards. And he said, I didn't realize, he says, when we were standing in line, he says, and you were speaking, it occurred to me. He says, what you don't know about me, he says, for years, so he had suicide attempts before. And he said, standing in line, I realized the effect, his dog's name was Flame, the effect she'd had on me. He said, what you don't know is that for years prior to coming into this program, I would run the water cold every morning in the shower. He says, I would decide if I was going to do one more day. Every day, that's how I started my day. I would be in the shower. He says, because I'd had suicide attempts before. So I knew that the next time I tried, if I did, I would not fail. He says, I know where it would be, who would find me, how I was going to do it, and it would not fail. And every day I would decide if I was going to do one more day, and I would run the water cold. And he goes, while I was standing in line and you were talking, it occurred to me, I have not had a morning like that since I met Flame. And we were 3 weeks in, because he had hope. His mindset was somewhere else. He had forward thinking and all that. So that was that moment. So let's fast forward 3 or 4, 5, 6 months, because our service dogs follow him everywhere. He's in the shower one morning, and Flame is in the bathroom with him, and he's running the water cold, and his mind is back in that darkness. And he was thinking, he had suicidal ideations. And Flame started whining and showed distress and interrupted that moment in the shower and brought him out of that moment, because she could sense it. And it's just, how do you put a dollar amount on that? How do you put that into words? How do you tell that story and have it be as impactful as it was to that veteran in that moment, alone with that thinking, and that dog is interrupting it? I mean, he's a grandfather, he's a father, he looks like Santa Claus, and you wouldn't, and that's just the thing. That's why they call it invisible wounds of war. You would never know what our veterans are dealing with. You would never know that years after not wearing the uniform anymore, they are still paying a price for our freedom, dealing with invisible wounds of war and trauma. And our dogs are a window of hope in all of that. And they're absolutely changing lives. They're absolutely changing lives. 212 so far. And we're not stopping.
Can you unpack invisible wound of war?
Absolutely. What I've learned a lot about PTSD in the last 12 years. I founded Northwest Battle Base 12 years ago. And I've learned a lot through working with our veterans. And of course, I've been educating myself at the same time. But an invisible wound of war is when somebody has experienced, first of all, PTSD can either be caused by a single traumatic event or trauma over a period of time, but it literally changes your brain. And I don't want to get into all that because I'm not a doctor and I can't speak to it, but I will tell you, it literally changes the chemical makeup, and it changes the brain to where they see the world differently. They respond differently. They have triggers, whether it be different, whether it be sound, whether it be crowds, whether it be smell. We had one veteran that the smell of diesel would take him back and be an instant trigger. Crowds are a common one. They don't want to go out in public. They don't like crowds. An invisible wound of war is a debilitating symptom that keeps them bound and imprisoned in their mind, in their home. If they're not willing to go out in public, they have panic attacks, they have night terrors. Our veterans are not sleeping. One of the things that's amazing is our service dogs are waking our veterans up from nightmares and immediately applying this comfort of normalcy. And now, in fact, a lot of our veterans, the wives can't wake the veterans up from nightmares because of the human touch. They can come out swinging. They can come out where the veteran will come out of the nightmare and be actually attacking. But they don't with our dogs, because and the only way I can equate it is a completely different type of touch. Whether they're nuzzling, the dog is nuzzling the veteran, standing on their chest, licking their face. But the veterans come out softer because it feels different. The senses are, the sensation is different. So they come out and are sharing affection with our dogs and coming out of those moments. But invisible wounds, our veterans are afraid of crowds. They don't want to talk to people. They're isolated. They have night terrors. They have panic attacks. But you don't see it. See, if we were to see somebody, especially with a service dog, if you were to see somebody that was losing a limb, or that was with some of our veterans have walkers, some of them have canes, some of them are in wheelchairs, and then they have a service dog, you're like, that makes sense. But one of the worst things for our veterans is when they walk in. The reason they're able to walk in that store is because they have the confidence, they feel safer, and that dog gives them the courage to walk into that store. We just had veterans at a concert that was a benefit for us. They would have never done that. We just had a veteran do a TV or interview on TV. He would have never done that before he received his dog. Because our dogs, they are a lifeline of freedom and independence, and they make them feel safer, and they help them feel more courageous to go out and do. But one of the worst things for our veterans is when you have this healthy looking man, by all right, because he doesn't appear to have experienced trauma or have anything wrong with him. And when they go in with a service dog and they're having to say, well, this is my service dog. And they're like, well, you don't look like anything's wrong with you. It's invisible. And then they are having to navigate that. So
You just triggered something. Maybe trigger is not the best word, but because I'm picturing, if I'm a veteran, I'm lying there and I'm having a nightmare. And I'm picturing, if a wife tries to wake me, part of her trying to wake me is she's nervous. She's alarmed. She has anxiety. She's caring, but it's like, wake up. But it's not so much connecting. And I'm picturing that if I'm laying there and I have a service dog, and the dog senses it and just puts a paw over me, puts a paw over my shoulder, that there's no anxiety. It's like 100% connection. It's almost like the dog is saying, I feel your pain. I feel your panic. I feel whatever. And I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Whereas I could see how, if they're having a nightmare, that, a spouse is a little bit freaked out. It'll be, wake up. You're just having a nightmare. And did that make any sense to you, what I just said?
it makes absolute sense. It's the thing is one of the things is our veterans. So we have veterans that are sleeping in the other, prior to coming into our program, they're actually sleeping in another room because they have come out of a nightmare and attacked their wife. And so now they don't trust themselves to sleep with their wives. How horrible is that? How tragic is that? Number one. Number two, but then there would be the concern for the wife. It's like there's now a responsibility. If they're brought out of a nightmare and then they are abrupt with their wife, then there's the guilt. There's the, I'm not being the man. And there's all that human emotion that is attached to the other human that I think can add to the residual compound effect result of a nightmare. Whereas a dog, the one thing about dogs, we don't have to explain a thing. We wake up, they require nothing of us other than to be fair, because trust is the most important thing in the dog world, and they lean in, and they don't require us to be anything to them but fair. They don't require, it's a safe place. Dogs are safe places. That's what our veterans find. These dogs, and there's no other relationship like that, you know? And so what's awesome is when our veterans get our dogs, often they end up back in bed with their wife, and the wife lets the dog do it. So it brings that unity, and it starts to bring that family unit, because it's not just about the veterans. It is about the family. It's about the children. It's about the wives. It's about the extended family. And then it's about the community. But it starts with the human being, the one. And then it's that ripple effect of healing and growth and understanding and education when the dog is the center of it.
It's interesting because as I said, you know, we've had dogs, and because part of what you're saying is when you're with a human being, you have to worry about their feelings. You have to worry about, oh, I don't want to upset them, you know, and having to worry is eliminated, that when you're with this dog that is just totally connecting to you and tracking with you emotionally, it's like you don't have to worry at all.
Yeah, you don't. It's a complete safe place, and you don't have to explain anything. There's no residual. And that's one of the things. It's like, you know, our veterans, when they come in, I tell you what, the amount of brokenness, the lack of self-esteem, the lack, you know, let's just talk about the men. Obviously, we have females in our program as well, but the percentage of men is higher. They feel completely worthless. They feel they bring no value. They feel like they're a burden. They're a burden. They're a burden on their family. They can't go anywhere without the service human. And then you have the residual PTSD that goes to the family, because everybody ends up living their life to make sure that they don't trigger their let's just say it's a father and a husband. We don't want to trigger him. We want to make sure the world is safe. We want to cater to what's going to upset him. We don't want any of that to happen. So then you have that and then the man wants to be the provider, the protector. They want to be the strength. They want to be the one. I got you. Not that you have to protect me. And then they get a dog, a professionally trained service dog. They're trained how to navigate life. They are educated about it. And then they start going out. They start living life. They're not listening to the children's outings with, you know, so often the dads stay home and the kids go out with the mom. And then they come home and the dad gets to hear about the memories instead of sharing the memories. You know, some men come in, and we always ask our veterans, you know, we're like, why do you want a service dog? I want to hear from them. Oh, yeah, it's obvious. It's obvious why they want a service dog, but where does it really come down to? And I had this one dad, and he's like, he was a single dad, and he goes, I want to be able to, his daughter was 4. He goes, I want to be able to take her to the park by myself as a man, as her father, without a service person there to take care of me. And that sounds so simple, but so profound. I had another guy, you know, I was like, what's your why? What's really, when it comes down to it, he started crying. He's like, I just want to dance with my daughter. And it's like things that we take for granted on a daily basis. I go to the store, I go out, I think about what I want to do, what I want to do for my boys. I have all the freedom and choices that life will offer me. But our veterans go, well, I can't go do this because of that. I can't go out because of the crowd. I can't go that because my back will be exposed. I can't go out because I can't carry a gun there. I can't go out because I don't have somebody to go with me that I trust. And their worlds are so small. And with a service dog, it gets bigger and bigger every day. And for us, in our program, it starts on day 1. We tell, you know, I have this thing that I'd say, it's like, you know, our veterans meet our veterans meet the dogs day 2 of 5-week program. And healing begins day 1. And because every single day they are pushing the boundaries, every single day they are learning something new. Every single day they are fighting their fears, trying to decide if they're going to trust us, trying to decide and we've had, it doesn't happen very often, but we have had veterans quit because they just can't do it. And it's not very often that happens. In fact, it's an incredibly small percentage. But the fact is they are here facing their fears every day. And sometimes it's the camaraderie of the group that gets them through it. They're other battle buddies that are actually humans. They're like, because it doesn't matter what conflict they came from, they draw from each other, no matter what the age or what the conflict or what it looked like, whether it's a Vietnam veteran or an Iraqi veteran or whatever it might be. And they have each other. And they're like, we're getting through this together. Nobody quits. I got you. And they help them through the toughest times. And a lot of times I may not know that until graduation day. But each day we see them grow. Each day they're conquering fears, each day. And then about week 3, they start having overnights with their dogs where they get to take their dogs home. And they get to be with them 24/7. And they get to know what it's like to have that dog at night. And some of our dogs are waking our veterans up on their very first overnights. And they're coming back and they're like, I slept for the first time all night in years. We take so much for granted as Americans that didn't have to pay that price. And that's why we do what we do at Northwest Battle Buddies, is my freedom was free to me, but it was paid for my whole life. And before I was born, I was born into free America because somebody paid a price for me. And as free Americans, we have to give back. We have to take care of our men and women who are still paying a price for my freedom. And I'm just taking my gift and talent and I'm harnessing it in a way that I can say thank you and I can give back and I can make a difference. And it's not just me, it's our whole organization, and it's organizations like us. And it's people like you that have given us a platform to tell other veterans out there, man, if you're thinking about ending your life, there is hope out there on the end of a leash. When it's done right, it is life-changing. And don't quit. Do not quit, because you have value. You're not a burden. And I tell our veterans all the time when they're out there with our service dogs, you are the mission in action. You bring hope and healing to a veteran. Veterans are going to be watching you and going, man, can I have that? Could I really have a different life with a service dog at my side? Our veterans are the mission in action. We have 212 of them. And we're starting another group of 14 in October. And we're already training another group of dogs for a group that's going to be coming in February. I mean, we are busy training dogs, and veterans need to just ask for help. Our dogs are gifted 100% to these American heroes. Our dogs are valued at $25,000 by the time they leave us, and they are gifted to our veterans because they've already earned it. They've already earned it. And anytime we have the honor of serving them, it's just such an incredible, proud moment for us. The 2 most important days for us in this organization is, number 1, when our veterans are meeting their service dogs. Because you see the tears, you see the hope, you see the walls start to come down. And then after 5 weeks, when they're walking away with their service dog and they've graduated. And I have this saying that I came up with, but I tell them, it's like, it is our hope that the day the veterans meet their service dogs, it is their last worst day. And the day that they meet their service dogs, it is their best first day. Because that day is a marker where their life is completely different. And they are forever changed. And they're part of the Northwest Battle Buddies family.
I want to run something by you, okay? Yeah, first of all, this needs to get out. What you're doing needs to get out. I mean, it's got to. Do you get a lot of interviews in the media? Are you on TV? Are you getting much?
As much as we can. We actually hired a PR group about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. And, through the last 12 years, I've done my share of interviews, but nothing as much as I've been doing them the last month and a half to 2 months. I've been doing, now almost weekly interviews. I will tell the story anywhere and everywhere that people will let us, because our American heroes, they need to have their story told, because they will never ask you for anything. In fact, one of the most greatest challenges we have is getting them to understand. I tell our veterans, if you're in front of me, you better run with this, because they don't want to take something from another brother and sister that served alongside them or another veteran. They don't want to take it. They don't. They're like, no, give it to somebody else. Give it to somebody else. I'm like, look, they're not in front of me. You are. Embrace it. Run with it. Be the hope that somebody else is looking for. You know, we will tell their story from the rooftops if they would offer them.
So can I give you a few suggestions, because you've just mesmerized me? Can I offer a couple
Yes.
things that might help with your messaging? Although your messaging is terrific.
Absolutely.
Part of the way surgical empathy is different than clinical empathy.
Okay.
So clinical empathy is professional empathy, and you're checking boxes. But imagine if you're depressed and suicidal and you're meeting a professional and they're saying, have you been depressed? Yes. How long have you been depressed? You give an answer. Have you ever thought of hurting yourself? Yes. Have you ever tried to hurt yourself? Do you currently have a means to hurt yourself? So that's all perfectly professional and detached. Surgical empathy would be, and it's a different nuance. It would be, you've been depressed, haven't you? Uh-huh. And you've been really depressed sometimes. Isn't that true? Uh-huh. You've been so depressed that you didn't know how you were going to make it through it. And there were times when you wished it would all end. Is that true? Yeah. But can you feel the difference between those two?
100%. 100%.
So here's a suggestion. Because I think one of the differences, and you're welcome to use this, and I'm happy offline to brainstorm with you, because as I said, part of my mission is, to help people like you doing what you're doing with, the time I have left. Something I think would be a helpful thing is, if you were to say to some of these veterans, you really hate having to understand or explain anything, don't you? They're going to go, what? You hate having to understand something that you don't understand and you don't think you could ever understand. And you hate having to explain something that you can't explain. And when it feels like the world is wanting you to do that, it sometimes makes you feel worse, doesn't it? How'd you know that? Well, is that true? Absolutely. I mean, the world looks at me like they're interested. They want me to be able to understand something I can't understand. They want me to be explained something that I cannot explain, except when it really gets awful, I don't want to be here. So is any of that true? And look, I've worked with a fair amount of them, and I think they would feel like you're tracking with them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then if you were to say, would you say that one of the best things about your service dog is your service dog doesn't need you to understand or explain anything? And you get to have a connection with them. Whereas sometimes it's so frustrating with human beings. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to understand it. This is not making me better. Well, calm down. And there's something that we call mediated catharsis, meaning when you can offer them the words that capture their feelings, that enables them to get it off their chest, and you don't judge them, you just receive it, they calm down. So is any of this making any sense to you?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And because there's also something called affective labeling. It's a fancy term. There's a guy at UCLA named Matthew Lieberman. And his work, his theory is when you can get people to put into words what they're feeling, and it's the accurate words, it lessens agitation. And when you're doing something that causes them to not be able to do it, and you're there pestering them, well, blah, 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 blah. Well, we're just trying to help. They feel like screaming at you. Mm-hmm. And so one of the ways of by mediating, you're helping them to get something off their chest. And when you give them the right words, and and I'd be curious if you like this, if you could, as you're talking with veterans, if you were to say, you really can't stand it when the world is inviting you to explain or understand something that you just can't. And you sometimes want to scream at the world because they're making it worse, but they're looking at you with the look, but we're just trying to help. And it could just make you feel freaking nuts. Have you ever felt that before?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I go ahead.
So are you following that? So that's because I think if you can give them words to express it,
yeah,
and that's the mediating thing. See, when you're saying to them, I'll bet you sometimes feel that you hate it when the world wants you to explain something you can't explain and wants you to understand something you can't understand. And the world is looking at you, and it's actually making you feel worse. But you need to be polite, because if it's making you feel worse, you got an anger problem. So can you relate to any of that? And what I'm saying is, when you give them some of this vocabulary, they will calm down.
No, I really, really like that. I think out of everything that you said, the most, what I like, and I can totally see is, and I alluded to it, but it's like the dogs don't expect anything and they feel them. They feel them. There's no explanation needed. They don't have to explain themselves. They don't have to make excuses. There's no disappointment. There's no letting anybody down. There's no burden. And then the dogs themselves give them value because they have a responsibility. And I watch veterans all the time. Well, not all the time, through the last 12 years, multiple stories about how veterans live a safer life. They were reckless with their body. They were reckless with themselves because they didn't care what happened to themselves, because they didn't value themselves. But now they value their service dog so much that they live a healthier life, because who will take care of my service dog? That's where the value, and because the dog gives them something that they don't get anywhere else, because the dog does feel them. That's amazing.
Do they do any of the training of the dogs, or are they given to the dogs given to them trained?
The dogs are given to them trained, but they have to train them. I mean, I wish the dogs were robots. I could just punch save and be like, here's your commands, you're good to go. But it isn't like that. We train the dogs for 5 months. We teach them how to navigate all of life that we possibly can. And then our veterans come in, they get paired with their dog, and then they start learning how to lead the dog. I mean, we do just straight up obedience, but then also we teach them how to navigate the outside world. The malls, grocery stores, we take them through Portland Airport security. Where they want to travel, we go through public transportation, restaurant, churches. I mean, everything that we can imagine. Our dogs are on boats with our veterans as they do recreation and are trying to go out and live their life. So we teach them how to handle and train their dog with excellence. And then once they do graduate, then they come back 3 months later for an afternoon and we watch their testing again. They come back and we check in, we check the dog's weights. How are you doing? We connect. And we have a veteran liaison that is constantly connecting. I mean, she's connecting week after week. Once they even leave, we have continuous check-ins, giving that feedback. Getting that feedback to make sure that they have their needs met. And then 9 months later, they do the testing again. And then every year they recertify for the life of the dog. That is our process. And that way they're accountable to us. They sign contracts, all of that. But we also offer ongoing education for our veterans. If they're ever struggling with their dog, if they ever need anything, they are so welcome to come out and train with our other veterans. They can come join any group. A lot of times they come back and they volunteer for the groups, and they'll be there to meet the veterans and say, hey, I know where you are. I was there, but now I have my dog and now I can do this. And this is how my life has changed. And so our veterans want to give back and they want to be with other veterans. And so we tell everybody, it's like you're part of the Northwest Battle Base family. And these are 10-year relationships, 12-year relationships, unless they then turn around and receive, if something happens to their dog, they go to the top of our list and receive another dog, as long as they were in good standing. It's a lifetime commitment to these American heroes. And it's a lot, but it's amazing, and it works. It works. It changes lives.
So I want to share something with you that if it doesn't make you cry, it's going to make me cry. There's a place, I'm not sure if it's operating, I think it still is, in Los Angeles, called Vista Del Mar. And Vista Del Mar was a place where troublesome kids were sent. Basically throwaway kids. And they had a program where throwaway dogs from the kennels would be given to them, and the kids would train them for a month. And with the promise that instead of the dogs being put to sleep, the dogs would be placed in good homes. And once a month, they would have graduation day. And these throwaway kids, these juveniles, would show you what and they'd get up every morning. I mean, they learn discipline. They bathe them. They get, these are kids who are like heading towards being juvenile delinquents, and they're getting up at sunrise. And I went to a couple of the graduation ceremonies, and and they're demonstrating how they've trained the dog so the dog can go into a home, so that it's not clear where the kids are going to go, but that was the promise. And they got to name the dog. And they talk about, this is Charlie. He's my best friend. And Charlie, and they demonstrate during the graduation ceremony all the different things they had taught the dogs. And they'd say, and now Charlie gets to go into a nice home. And I'll tell you, there's not a dry eye in that whole place. And I think they discontinued it. I'll have to check it out. But I just want to share that with you because I thought you might resonate with the love that's possible with dogs.
No, it's amazing. It touched me. I have tears in my eyes. You can probably hear it in my voice. But when I especially in the beginning, all of our dogs came out of shelters, and I'd be walking through these shelters and I'd be thinking, I'm watching all these dogs. I mean, I've been a professional trainer for now 30 years. And as I'm watching through and I'm seeing the different behaviors, and then you see the dog on the fence, you see the dog sitting in the corner, you see the throwaways, you see, in so many, I could look at all the reasons why the dogs were in there and on the card, and it was all about obedience. It was all about the dog is misunderstood, and it's never the dog's fault. It's never the dog's fault. There are no bad dogs. It's humans' responsibility to lead these animals properly and be educated. It is. And so I would look at these dogs, but as I'd be walking through, knowing, I'm like, it is Christmas Day for somebody, because you're going to a life where you are going to live. I mean, the best life is a service life for a dog. They have constant leadership, constant companionship, constant purpose, the education that goes behind the handler in our program for these dogs. And you're saving a life to save a life. It's amazing. And I love dogs. I love what I get to do, whether it's for the veterans or whether it's for the police departments, whether it's for the families that have come to me. I just trained a dog that he bit 3 people in the home. And if I can't help them, then they feel they have to put him down. And we bring education, we bring understanding, we save their life. And the tears and the family unit, it's so much, but they bring so much. I'm really grateful to God that I feel this was my assignment. And I love what I do, and I love the people I serve, and I love the animals that they give me something. You know, just really quick, I have a lot of responsibilities, and sometimes for myself personally, because I have a lot of dogs around me and I have my own personal dogs. But sometimes for me, when I have the world coming in on me, I just have to go get a dog on leash, and I go out in my field and I connect. And I work this dog, and I feel this dog, and I love on this dog, and I lead this dog, and it centers my world. And I get to do that every day. And I get to teach people how to do that. And it's amazing. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful.
You are a blessing.
Thank you. Thank
Wow.
you.
And
I,
the world is fortunate to have you in it.
thank you. I know I've never been on an interview and had anybody say that to me. But thank you. And I feel honored to be able to walk this walk. I'm the one that's blessed.
Absolutely. Where can people find out more about you?
If they want to go to, first of all, northwestbattlebuddies.org. We have our website. People can, veterans, if you're a veteran, a veteran that needs hope, a veteran that has PTSD, a veteran, or if you are a veteran, man, reach out, don't quit. We will help you. We will absolutely help you. If you love your free, and if anybody's looking to help us, we need money. We need finances. We cannot do this without the American people that love their freedom and the men and women who have provided it. Because I can't do this by myself. I have an entire amazing team that is working 365 days a year, endlessly serving our American heroes, training dogs and serving our veterans. But we can't do it without the Americans that want to be a part of what we're doing, and we need the finances. Our dogs cost us $25,000 by the time we gift them to our veterans, and we need help. And the only thing that is standing between us and doing more, which we are one of the largest service dog providers for veterans in the United States, but the only thing that is standing between us and doing more is finances. We have right now, the waiting period for our veterans in our program is 9 months. If somebody signs up today with a suicide rate of 22 veterans a day, it is 9 months before we can introduce them to a dog. And it's too long. We don't want them to think they're just putting on, and we also, we take that very seriously, because so many veterans, there are so many organizations out there that do let veterans down. Well, we're not one of them. We are not one of them. We are right now. I am about to birth some puppies, English labs, this week, and we are preparing for veterans in the winter of 2025. That's how long it takes if we get a dog that is born from a puppy 15 to 18 months later before he meets his veteran. That's how dedicated we are. That's how far into the future we look. And right now it's 9 months for our veterans. I think we have 60 veterans on our list.
How do the veterans come to you? How do they beat the dog?
Yeah, we're nationwide, and they come to Battleground, Washington, and they stay in the local area, and they come to, it's a 4-acre piece of property here, and they train on this property. They meet the dogs here. And then we also, on week 3, we start going out in public and we navigate life and we teach all that. It's 5 weeks and we walk it out with them. And I'm telling you, when you have a veteran that is terrified to go into a store. We have veterans, we go into the Walmart as an example, that's the first outing. And we have veterans that haven't been in a store for like 10 years. And there they are walking in with us and their service dog. And they might be white knuckling that cart. They might be stopping and having tears run down their eyes or down their face. And we teach them right there on day one when they're out there in public how to start to use the dog and ground themselves, and they get through it. And then when they get through it, it's like it's a win. And they might have anxieties about I could have done this better, I could have done that, or I broke down, or I had a panic attack. I'm like, but you did it. It was a win. It's like you know, and I tell them, it's like, you know what? If you aren't uncomfortable, you're not growing. And I tell them right away, you better get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because everybody's gonna be staring at you. But don't worry, it's not you they're looking at. It's your beautiful dog at your side. You know, just hold your head high. Think about your dog, get through it. It's about your family. It's about your why. And our why at Northwest Battle Buddies, and my why, is the way my dad raised me. It's his legacy. When you're in the presence of a veteran, you're in the presence of a hero. And where would we be without our freedom? And when I founded this, I just wanted to say thank you and give a gift. And it turned into all this.
Well, God bless you. And if you're listening, and I'll send you the video, put it up on YouTube, because I don't really have a team. But if you're listening or you see this on YouTube, I'm asking all of you as a favor, if you're listening and viewing this, help Northwest Battle Buddies. Our veterans are our heroes. They deserve much more than they're getting. This makes a real difference. This saves lives. And if you've ever wanted to return a favor to me for this podcast and you find value in it, do me a favor. Help Northwest Battle Buddies and what Shannon's doing. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Northwestbattlebuddies.org. Don't forget it.
You got it. Okay. Take care. And when wake up calls come your way, make sure you wake up. And if this one didn't wake you up, you need a stronger alarm clock. Anyway, take good care. It's a privilege to meet you, Shannon.
It was a privilege to be on your show. Thank you.
Thank you.